Hey kids, we're back on this 2016 Ford Focus on the final step where we're going to put this transmission back into the car. Catch you up if you missed the last video. We put a new clutch in this transmission. Along the way we found out that even though the car is a 2016, the previous owner must have put a used 2014 transmission. Luckily for us, they are interchangeable. Now, I forgot a step. This is the actuator. I was supposed to put some anti-seize on that spline, so I'm going to take 5 minutes to do that. And if you recall, when I unlocked the clutch with this special tool on both actuators, it slipped out. So I'm just going to take a couple seconds to wind that down. I think that's 14 times right there. Now, I need to hopefully let this go back much slower than it did before. There, I'm happy with that. I'm going to do the same with the other one. I'm just going to add a little anti-seize to that spline, and of course anti-seize is the best stuff in the world. This is copper and it's the dirtiest stuff to work with. Once you get it on your hands, it gets everywhere. So I'm just going to put a little bit on those splines, and then it says to put a little bit around here. Doesn't really say how much, so I'm just going with a little bit. I'll put those back on. I won't bother recording the rest of that. I'll turn it back on here in a second. The last thing I want to do before we start is see this little triangle right here by this bolt. There's another one on the side of the flex plate, and they have to be lined up to get this thing to balance properly. So I'm just going to mark this white so we can see it. And you'll understand what I'm doing more when we go to put it together. But it's just going to help us find that bolt. And then the way that you have to tighten these up, I'm going to put red on this one. It's just so tight in there, you just can't see what you're doing. You only end up with like a little hole this big where the starter goes. And then I'm going to put black on this one. And the reason being is the tightening sequence is 1, 3, 5, and then you're supposed to come back and do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1. So if I have them painted, I'm going to be able to find them easier. I remember when I took them off, I had a really hard time wondering if I was on the same, was going to the next bolt, or if I had skipped a bolt. And this, I think, will help. Who knows? All right, let's get started. So we were talking about that little triangle right there. That has to match up with the triangle. Let's drop the phone. Right there, that's the flex plate. So we need to get that bolt right into that hole for it to balance. And then there's those 6 other bolts on that clutch are going to go there. So what should I do? Let me get my engine crane set up and I'll push this transmission under the car and then we'll start videoing this. There's a dowel right there that we need to hit, and another dowel there that we need to hit for alignment. And I have that triangle set up right there where the starter goes. So I think everything is good. Might take a little bit of wiggling to get that on and get a few bolts in it. But let's start pulling it up. On the back of the transmission we have a couple of those speed sensing sensors that we have to be careful of, and all this wiring for the actuators that goes into the TCM. There's a little shifter lever, be careful of that. So we'll just take her step by step here. We'll just take it inch by inch here. I remember that if we had the transmission towards the front of the car, that it could clear those sensors. And then once we got it up past that subframe, we could push it back a little bit. I think once I get by that CV axle, I think it'll straighten out. And then the next part was to try to get it up past that subframe without breaking those 2 sensors. Like a little jigsaw puzzle. I'm terrible at puzzles. I bought this new mic, and I noticed in the last video it's picking up my breathing, which is disgusting. And I had COVID, so it was even worse. So I tried to make an adjustment on that, and I did a little test, but the test didn't work out great. All right, I am up above those sensors. So now I want to move the transmission towards the back of the car, if that's possible. Okay, there was a bolt hooked onto the subframe. I just noticed that when I pulled that transmission up, it went right into that little bracket. That's pretty good luck right there. And then that dowel is right there. And we're pretty close to being able to get that in there as well. That's our next step, to try to get those dowels in those holes. Does anybody have any good ideas? Okay, let's see where that gets me. Okay, there's another bolt up here that I put in. That went in no problem. Up here at the top. And then there's another one here at the top to the right. See if I can get that one. I put it. I thought I had it up here. Yeah, right there. See if that will start. Can hardly get my hand in there, so it's not as easy as the other ones. All right, time to take a break. I have no idea what I did to get that to start. I was just wiggling it up top, and there was a big hose up here that I moved it out of the way and heard a big clunk. And I looked up in there and I saw that white bolt was in there. I wish I could get a better view of that to be 100% sure. I think I need to get a camera up there and have a look. So I'll dig my camera out and take a break here. There's our white bolt. And there's our triangle. We are not centered. That's one thing that it says, make sure those studs are centered before you tighten them up. But I'll get the rest of the bell housing bolts in now, and we're doing very well here. All right, next morning. Ran out of steam last night. Get a couple more of these bell housing bolts in. Okay, we're to the right of the air filter, just above this actuator, and this is the one here that will hold the ground. Put that in. All right, there was 2 bolts that went back the other way. I put that one in. I think that was one of the first ones I put in. And there's another one right here. Okay, so there's 10 bolts altogether. 2 to the driver's side, 2 to the passenger side, the one right up here for the ground, and then there's 3 on top, and then 2 that are up by the catalytic converter. So I'm missing 1 from up top and 1 by the catalytic converter. I'll have to get those next week. Let me grab the torque and we'll tighten those up. All right, we're back up top. This is the transmission here, and there's a bracket that goes right here, and then the transmission mount goes right there. There's 2 bolts here and here that are the same. And then this one towards the front of the car has a stud on it that holds another bracket. These are a 15 mil. I don't have a torque for them, but they're about the same size as the bell housing bolts, so I'm going to put them at 35 foot-pounds. Now this little bracket is supposed to go in here to hold that cable. On top of that bracket goes the transmission mount. I want to make sure I don't pinch any wires. Okay, that transmission looks like it needs to go towards the front of the car a little bit. Trying to get you a front row seat. have enough room to do everything. Let me see, let me grab my light to see if that is where it's supposed to be. Yep, perfectly lined up. Couldn't find where I put the bolt. Apparently these go bad, and the engine mount on the other side as well. So 111 foot-pounds. Now that we have this transmission mount on, I think there's enough holding it. We have most of the bell housing bolts finger tight. I can release this engine crane. Next thing I want to do is start tightening up and torquing these bell housing bolts. And I just want to show you where this one is. Right there. So to get on it, I'm going to have to use like wobbles and extensions. So we're not going to get a true torque, but they're all supposed to be 35 foot-pounds. And then I'll probably try to do a little bit of a like cross pattern of tightening. I'll try this one and then I'll go underneath and do one and come back up and grab another one up here. So remember, there was 3 up top, this one, and 2 to the left. I'm missing the middle one. I'm going to get that next week. And then we have 5 underneath, and then we have 2 by the catalytic converter, and I'm missing one of those, and I'll get that this week as well. Once I get these bell housing bolts done, I need to fix that coolant hose that I broke when we first started. That's been leaking drops non-stop. You can see that I've got transmission fluid all dripping here. Or sorry, coolant fluid. I'm laying on my left side on the floor using my left hand and a wobble and getting dripped on by coolant. And whining like a little baby. Back up top, I found out why I had a major leak. I'll have to look over the video, but in the last 15 minutes, I must have knocked that golf tee out, and that little tube that I broke, it was just dripping out of there like crazy. Now, see if I can get you down there to see this next one. There it is there, right in the center of the screen. I put a little white on it so I could see it. It's about 12 inches from the last one we put on the top, and there's another one a few inches to its right that's the one that's missing. So we'll get this one next. I don't have a good explanation as to why I didn't take that throttle body off to give myself more room. Once I get that leak fixed, I'm going to take it off, and maybe that will give me more room to put those nuts on. Okay, let's go back down underneath. That one there was the one that points back through to the driver's side. And there's another one right on the other side here. Okay. This one here is up above that actuator, and it has a stud on it for a ground. And if you forget to put the ground on, the car will not start. It's the ground for the TCM. And when I started to take the transmission down, I forgot to take this one off. I left it on. And I forgot to take it off. Alright, the next one I want to get, which I think is the last one, is up by that catalytic converter. So I'll move the camera over there and see if we can get a sight on that one. Okay, this is the one here that you can't get out. So you just back it off, and then you can get the transmission to come out. I don't think I can get on that in the way that I know of anyways, with a torque wrench. So I'm going to try to get on it with a 13 mil ratchet wrench. I'm just going to snag it up. And I hate these famous words that those of us that don't know what we're doing and don't have the proper tools say, but I'm going to have to call it good. The next thing I want to do is get this roll restrictor hooked up. It had two bolts, one was silver and one was black. The silver one goes up through, and the black one goes horizontally. And if you mix those up, you're going to have a vibration apparently. I still have the engine supported here to the left. I'm going to take a little weight off that because I need to move that a little bit towards the front of the car for that to fit. There we go, that's going to work. Almost need an extra set of hands here. try it this way first. Okay, gotta figure something out here. Crowbar. This is 15 millimeter. And this one here is 15 as well. And I have a torque for this one. It's 63 foot-pounds. I couldn't find one on the other one, but I assume it's the same. Okay, that's good. I think I'm okay to lower this jack down now. Because the transmission and engine are completely supported now. That worked well. I want to see if I take this throttle body off, if I'll have more room, because when I took those flex nuts off, I literally put my arm down underneath here to get at it. I tried to get at it from the bottom and it doesn't work. Well, somebody broke that. You can see the little piece in there that broke off it. It's just the lock, but it's just another thing that's damaged. And then it looks like there's just 4 8mm bolts. Now let that come right off. Oh yeah. Probably could use a little bit of cleaning too while we have it off. I'll put a couple rags in there to stop anything from falling in there, especially my coolant. Oh yeah, I should be able to get in there easier now. I'm not sure why I didn't do that when I took them off. All right, let me go grab those nuts. I had that in there to soften up coolant yesterday. The kit came with 6 new nuts, so we'll do that next. All right, there's the flex plate, and the kit had 6 new nuts. Now, the problem with this little job Every job has its challenges. If you drop one of these nuts, you either have to take the transmission back out, or you might be able to fish a magnet down in there. I doubt that. And I've seen some people take off the oil pan. And I have to do this blind as soon as I put my hand down there. It's going to cover that camera up. There's number one. And I'm just putting them on hand tight, and then I'll come back in and tighten them up. I wonder if I should throw the ratchet wrench on there real quick. So I am sliding my hand down under where that throttle body was and doing this completely by feel. There, that one's set. Now we need to move to the next one. So you can see that one has the red dot on it. Try to get that one. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, so another one. Oh my God, I almost dropped it. One more. Can't drop these or it's all gotta come out. All right, that's the sixth one. Now we need to go back to number one. All right, I have quite a small little torque wrench, about 9.5 inches long. And I tried a wobble and tried it without, and I don't have anything that can get down in there to put a torque on those bolts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my ratcheting wrench, and I see a lot of guys doing this, so they have the same challenge, not having the proper tools. And I'm going to just try to go by feel, and we'll start out doing nut 1, which is the white nut. We'll go 1, 3, and 5, and I'll tighten up until that flex plate just starts to move, and then we'll move on to the second round. So there's our first bolt that we colored white, and it had the triangle, which was a triangle on the flex plate and the clutch. so it would balance. I'm going to go down in here and try to get on that nut with my ratchet wrench. I'm going to tighten that up until it starts to move that flex plate. This is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. Probably should have taken the intake manifold off to give me even more room. There, that's started to move that, so I'll leave that. And now I'll move on to number 3. I'm over here by the passenger side front wheel, and I'm turning the crankshaft. And I'm looking at that camera. Is that our red bolt? Yep. So that's number 3. All right, that is the red bolt. Almost rubbed it off. Putting the nut on it. Okay, that one's tight. Now we'll go find the black bolt, which is 2 from this one. There's our black bolt. All right. So that first sequence was supposed to be done at 105 inch-pounds. And now this next sequence, everything's supposed to go up to 216 inch-pounds. I don't know how scientific this is, but I took my small torque wrench and I tightened the same size bolt up to try to get a feel for what 216 inch-pounds would feel like. And it's quite a bit of force on a small little 6-inch wrench. So I don't know how close this is going to be, but like I said, I can't figure out how to get my torque wrench in there. So let's move on to these, to the second bolt, and then we'll go around and tighten them up. And then I might try to get my torque wrench on there again. So there's number 1. What we're calling number 1. So I want to go to number 2. And we'll tighten that up. Okay, I'm going to try it. How was that? Was it hard to hold?
Like, now I'm dirty.
Do you want to go put something different on?
No.
All right, so I have 5 more of those to do, and the battery's running flat on my camera. So I'll bring you back on when I get those tightened up.
What were those wood for? Anything important? Like, is the car gonna fall down?
No, I took that out because I don't need that anymore. I'm way past that. All right, last one. Perfect. Thank you. If I ever did that job again, I would take that intake manifold off to see if that would give me a lot more room. I went back through and I put my ratchet wrench on the nuts and I jammed the crowbar onto the flex plate to make sure all the nuts were good and tight. And again, I couldn't get in there to torque them, but I think they're good and snug. This next thing is like a little gasket for the starter. So you can see there's one big problem with this design. Right off the bat, you just know that there's water getting in here. So I'll stick that in, and then I'll try to stick the camera down there to show you where it is. And I remember these two holes face the driver's side. Must have went in like something like that. I pushed it over a little bit more. That seems like how it's going to be. So we'll push that starter in next. You can see a dowel right there. Right there. And there's one on top that the starter fits in. I'll go down underneath and see if I can push it over onto that. You're in the way. Let me move you over just a hair. I'll take a picture if I can get it on there. I think we're close. Just hard to get your hands in there. It's always easier to take things off than it is to get them back on. I'll put those two studs in and turn the crankshaft and see how it feels. There's two little studs and a bracket that goes on the outside, but a lot of people don't bother putting that bracket back on. I think it holds a cable. There's the two studs. Everything looks fine. I'll leave that. I'm gonna go look at that little bracket that was on there and see if it's worth putting back on. Those two studs are supposed to be 26 foot-pounds. I had that one almost perfect. Alrighty, 26 foot-pounds. Now I'm going to grab that little bracket. I'll show you this when I get it on. You're not going to be able to see under there. The other one from below. Snagging that up. And go down below on the other side of it. I'll show you what that little bracket looks like. That's the bracket on the outside of the starter. I never hooked that hose up. I should do that so I don't forget. We're under the right front. And we need to get this CV axle put back in. I had tucked it up out of the way right here on the left. And I'm just going to take some transmission fluid and put it on the splines here to make sure they're clean. Not a lot of leverage under here when you're on your back. Oh, I see what's going on. It's caught on that bearing, I think. Oh, there. The bearing was caught on that stupid bracket. I was pushing, I couldn't see it on the other side. Let me show you. Ah, that's crazy. Where is it here? That bearing was caught on the bracket. As soon as I pushed it up a little bit, it went right in with zero force. I have a problem with this little seal protector. When I pulled it off, I bent it, and now it won't stay flush. So I need to deal with that. Not sure what to do there. This bearing looks centered on that bracket, so I think it's seated. The next thing I'm going to do is but when I push that in all the way, it certainly doesn't look seated, does it? I'm not 100% sure here. I'm going to try to get that ball joint back in and see if that will move it in some more. Let me rearrange the camera. There we go. Now I have to grab that pinch bolt. So we have this pinch bolt. It's a T55 on one side, 18 millimeter on the other. And then we torque this to 61 foot-pounds. We'll attach this little brake hose. While I was over at Ford, I got a new bracket. Not sure why I want to put a new one on. $13 mil. I still don't know what I'm going to do with that yet. Still thinking. Let's jump over to the driver's side and put that bad boy on. It's going to be a little tougher because it has that little O-ring on the end. This one over here on the passenger side didn't have anything on it. That was the number there for the bracket over the CV axle bearing. There we go. I think it went in that time. Let's put some light on it. That's what it was. That was the little trick. All these little tricks you need to know. I'll put the link at the end of this video, but I went and asked that Ford technician, Big Ben, and he told me to line that up and it'll go in. Easy peasy when you know what you're doing. We need to get this ball joint back in. There's the other side. Can't see what I'm doing here. Same as the other side, T55. $18mm. And then we had 61 foot-pounds. Next thing we want to do is put this brake hose back on. That's that. Okay, we're underneath the car. There's the CV hash shaft. Right there. And right up. There is the bolt that's missing. Right by the catalytic converter. So I have the bolt somewhere here. There's the bolt. Oh, I'm going to try to get that up in there and see if I can get a wrench on it. There's the bolt there. The previous owner decided he wasn't going to put that back in. So I got a new one from Ford and we'll give that a go here. All right, that second bolt's on. I just tightened it up by hand. I was able to put a extension and a wobble right through underneath, but I don't have any torque wrenches small enough that I was able to move it. So that's gonna have to be what it is. So we'll move up top and get the next bolt that I was missing. There's the next bolt. I'm up on top here. And it goes right there. There was 3 on top. I had the one on the left and one on the right, missing the one in the middle, so I'll grab that one next. Right there. $35 foot-pounds. Perfect. Under the car at the front, there's I don't know what we can see here in the camera because I can't see the camera. Oil filter, starter. There's a little TCM ground that I had pushed out of the way. One of the biggest things on this car was the grounds were terrible, caused all sorts of transmission problems. So need to sand off a little bit of the crud. There's a little nut. I sanded that off. Might have been too big. Try this little one. Snug that up. A little bit of dielectric grease. It's not a conductor, but if you put it on the outside, it will keep the weather out a little bit. All right, and sending unit right on there like that. The next thing we want to do is fill the transmission fluid, and someone had that nut, it's supposed to be an 8mm hex, all beat to pieces, so I had to pound my hex in with a hammer, and it was so tight that I had to use an impact to budge it. So we're going to lower the car down so it's level, and then we'll fill the transmission fluid. There's the transmission fluid, AMSOIL dual clutch transmission fluid. It's about half as expensive as the Ford stuff. And this is a vent right there. And I have seen one of these transmissions pulled apart, and this vent will allow the fluid to get exactly where it needs to be. So I'm going to go down through there. All right, when I pour the transmission fluid in, this is the actual fill hole right here. It's full when it's right to the top of those threads. I put a little bucket underneath to catch it, and it takes 1.8 quarts. I'll start pouring it in up top. That's the first bottle. I'll move the camera down below so you can tell me when it overflows. That's 1 quart. How are we looking down here? I lowered the car down so it's level. When I drained that transmission, it was up at an angle, so I don't know if it'll take the full 1.8 quarts. It's 1.7 to 1.8 is what it calls for. Here we go. That's a half a quart there. It's coming out, so we'll let that settle in, and then I'll just add a little bit more to make sure it's full. So it didn't take anywhere near what I thought it would, so I didn't get it completely empty like I thought. That's okay. So I'll throw that cap back on there, and we'll call that good. Let me grab the torque for that. This goes on at 32 foot-pounds. I don't know if I'll be able to get it with this. Perfect. Now I can throw this left front wheel back on. We'll tighten the lug nuts. They're 17mm. I'll do the other side, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Back up top, next thing we're going to do is put this shifter lever back on. It attaches here to the transmission. That just snaps on, focus, right there. And then it's bolted on, and those two bolts right there. Do that next. Looks like I tied this back with a tie. $10mm bolts. Show you what I'm doing here. This isn't anything exciting, but I just wanted to show you why I'm struggling so bad trying to get in there. I think they're started. Seem to be going in there all right now. That one does not have a good feeling to it. You know what? When I broke that overflow radiator hose, I think there's fluid down in there, so I'm gonna fire up the air pig and clean that out. All right, I just backed up a little bit. When I was taking this off, I broke the overflow hose for the radiator jug, and I noticed that there was fluid down in here, so I just took my air compressor, blew those out. I think they're all right now. One bolt seemed to go in fairly easy, and the other one felt bad, so I decided to back up, try again. There, I just snug those up. Now let me move you over. Let's see if we can snap that lever back on. That should just push back on, hopefully. Yep, snapped right in. That looks good. Happy with that. Okay, let me think about what our next plan is here. The next thing we have to do is get this TCM back on its connector. This is another one of those jobbies that when you pull up on the handle, it'll pull it into place. And it doesn't look like it's sucked in all the way, but I checked my notes and it says that it's going to stick out a little bit. I wasn't expecting it to stick out that much, but I'll have to see if I have a camera shot of that. But I think that's good. Let's get this transmission vent back in so nothing gets in there. Might have to rearrange that. I can't remember what that was clipped into, so I don't think it was clipped on anything. I'm just gonna be cautious when we go to fix that overflow hose that nothing gets down in there. The next thing we'll do is get this throttle body on there. It was pretty gross down in there, so I took some choke and carburetor cleaner and put that in there. That's all I had. So a couple Q-tips. Usually after I'm done working every day, I clean up my tools, so I'm all ready to go for the next day. But lately I haven't been doing that, so I've been scrambling trying to find things. I need to come up with a better system. I grab the torque. These are set at 89 inch-pounds. This plugged in here. That little red lock goes down like that. Never heard it click, but it feels like it's in. There was a little clamp right there that I put on that hose there. And that shifter cable went right in there. So I threw that in. Next we'll get this air dam back on. I left the bolt right here. It's 8 mil. Little tab on the side of it that locates it, which is awesome. This is over by the left front of the car, and this is another one of those grounds that people have problems with. So while we're in here, I'm going to take that off and put a little sandpaper on it. going to put a little dielectric grease to try to keep the water, moisture out of it. There's a bracket that goes in here. I'm not sure what the torque is on it. Looks like it goes that way. They are a 15 millimeter. I couldn't find a torque for these, so I'm just going to tighten them up. This battery box goes in next. Or something like so. The 3 bolts that were on that, I cleaned them up, but they were in bad shape, so I'm going to put some anti-seize on them. These are a 10 millimeter. I've had this battery on the charger ever since I took it off, so should be in good shape there. Kind of a dumb setup right there, if you ask me. There's a 2-part cover to this. I don't know if this is the back cover. It wasn't on. It was pushed way back when I took it apart. Something like that. Maybe I'll be able to get another one for the front from the junkyard or something maybe. And then there is this battery hold down. And there was a little tab here that went to the right. To my right, I should say, which is the driver's side. This looks like it's supposed to go right in there. I don't remember where this ran. That looks like it was just plugged onto there somehow. I don't see what that was plugged into. I don't even know if that's where it goes, but we're going to leave it there for now. We might as well deal with this overflow hose next. And I saw that the previous owner had already tried to patch it in one spot, and it's so brittle that it just needed a new piece. So I bought the entire assembly, and we'll go ahead and replace that next. So we're over here on the passenger side. This is the overflow tank. This is where it starts out. You can just imagine how fragile this stuff would be. There's that piece off. That's good. Now that runs all the way over here to the driver's side, just in behind the light, and it's a similar connection to the other side. So we'll try to pull that out next. I don't know if you can see that. Huh. All right, back over on the passenger side. When I took the hose out over on the driver's side, fluid went all everywhere. So I'm going to start over here and see if I can get things hooked up. There's the old piece there. There's the part there that shattered on me. broke there and broke there and broke in a third place. I need to get this little hose clamp off. And I don't want to break what's underneath it. I put plastic over that because I know as soon as I take that cable off, it's going to start pouring fluid out of there. Perfect. Nothing came out. I'll have to set that hose clamp. If I can just pull up on it to release it right there. Yep. Okay. All right. I got to get this quick because it's leaking already. There. There's the broken one. Well, that wasn't too bad. Spilt a little bit. Not near as bad as I thought it was going to be. There was a little bracket right here that I just undid so we could get a little bit more room for the chain. And then this wire here must have been in there. This hose that we put on for the overflow that was a part number for it. So there's, looks like there's a clip right there. clip right there. And clip under there. Hopefully that'll be okay. Next thing we need to put on is this. All right, let's put this air box in there. I noticed I called it a battery box in the first video. All right, we are completely back together. The last thing we need to do is a clutch relearn, but it is late on Saturday night, so we will do that tomorrow morning. Okay, we're in the car and we have to let this scan tool learn this new clutch. So the first thing I need to do is fire up the car and let it come up to temperature. All right, we are up to temperature, so we will begin this process. I'll plug the scan tool in, and I need to turn off the car here. We'll go into system selection, control module, special functions, TCM adaptive learning. This allows the TCM to learn new parameters after a component changed. Yes. Turn the ignition switch to the on position. I've done that. We have to do all three of these. We'll do TR sensor first. Nope. Play. Let it do its thing. Perform adaptive learning. This will calibrate the TR sensor. Yes. Make sure our transmission's in park. Okay, place the gear selector lever in the prompt position. Once the appropriate gear has been selected, click OK. The module will learn the position, and once completed, will prompt for the next gear. Okay. Okay, it's in park. Now I'm going to put it in reverse. Press the brake in. Press reverse. Now I'm going to put neutral. Car start indication means drive. Not sure why it says that. Now low gear. Now transmission range sensor 1, low battery. I don't know why it's saying low battery. It should be saying I'm in low gear. I guess this is a cheap scan tool. Move the gear selector lever to each position to verify that the TR sensor is functioning properly. So I'm in low. There's drive, which car start indication. Neutral. Reverse. Park. That's good. Okay. Turn the ignition to off. Okay. Now we're going to hit TCM adaptive learning again. Yes. Turn ignition to on. Now we're going to do shift drum. Note if command. This feature will check the two shift drums by referring to their position. The method is to move the shift drum to both ends to determine the maximum stroke. Make sure the gearbox is in park to depress the brake pedal. It's making a bunch of noises. Function is complete. Turn to the off position. We want to click TC Adaptive Learning one more time. Yes. Turn ignition to the on. Now we want to do the clutch. Make sure it's in park. Press the brake. Clutch A and B is passed. So it's going through a bunch of tests. Cross your fingers, eyes, and toes. Okay, if engine does not start, well, I guess it says start the engine. Make sure. Alright, so start the car and put the accelerator to the floor. Okay, gotta start the car. Gotta put the car to the floor. This just feels icky. It's revving at 3,500. Turns the idle state. Successful. Turn ignition switch to off. After completing this part, clear the DTCs. Alright, now we need to go clear the DTCs. Clear DTC. Please turn on the ignition switch. Yes, codes have been cleared. click powertrain control module. We're going to clear those ones. Clear DTC. Yes. Yes. Codes have been erased. Okay, it looks like everything worked out on the scan tool. So that lets the TCM learn your new clutch. So our next step is to take it for a drive. Let's take her for a drive. Just going to take it for a nice easy drive for a few miles. See if it can get itself up through the gears. So far, so good. Stop and get some fuel. Okay, so everything's working great. I'm going to just drive around for 10 miles and then I'll turn you back on. I drove it around the city for about 10 miles. Everything's working perfect. I'm now out on the highway doing about 80 kilometers an hour, 50 miles an hour. Working perfect. So we'll take it back to the house and stay tuned for my final thoughts. Most of the tools people have you can use for this job, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it. You might have to borrow a scan tool to relearn the clutch at the end, but other than that, I just use very basic tools. It would be awesome to have a hoist, but it's still easily done with these cars. I was talking to one of the mechanics and he said they used to do 1 or 2 of these a day for 10 years straight, and a lot of those guys just got sick of them and have moved on. So maybe there's not a lot of guys around that know anything about them anymore. I set up my engine crane to try to get a picture to use as the thumbnail for the video. Car worked really well. Shifts a little bit hard, but it's quiet. I assume it needs to be broken in, drive it for a few hundred miles, and I think it's going to be great. Now, Dad, he always told me you have to understand the problem before you can troubleshoot. Now, I had the advantage that I was driving this car every day, and I knew exactly what it was doing before I took it in. I'm not sure why that technician thought I needed a new TCM. That's not what the codes were telling me, and that's not what I was feeling when I was driving it. It just felt to me like those clutches were stuck exactly like the code said. Now, 10 years ago, I had a Dodge Avenger, and it quit on me, and I had it towed in, and they told me that it needed a $3,500 part. I can't even remember what it was, and they couldn't even get the part anymore. So I took it to a mechanic that my family knew, a small operation, and he called me back and said he didn't think what Dodge was saying was the problem. And he said he wanted to try a $75 part, but he said, if the part doesn't work, we can't return it. And I said, go for it. And he called me back an hour later and he said, come and get it. It's all fixed. So I questioned him, like, why would someone at a big dealership like Dodge not know what they were talking about? And he said he was a mechanic with all those years' experience. And a lot of these guys are just technicians coming out, and they only have a short amount of time to find the problem. They hook up those scan tools and they give you a quote and move on to the next thing. The only advice I have is if something doesn't seem right, get a second opinion. If we're talking big bucks here, it might cost you $100, but it could be well worth it. Anyhow, this was a fun project. Thank you for hanging out with me. We'll close this one off and we'll get another one going. Later.